Um, I'm Alex Mason. For those of you who know me, I'm going to apologize because even though it's springtime and it's tick season, and I've managed to avoid the ticks, but I clearly haven't managed to avoid the pollen. So my voice is a little raspy. But I want to welcome you. I'm the chairman of the Lyme Disease Clinical Research Center Advisory Board, and it is terrific to have all of you here tonight. This is a great showing on a night that Mother Nature made it a little bit challenging to get here. So this is really a collective celebration. This is the 10th anniversary of the center at Johns Hopkins. The celebration is aptly called a Decade of Discovery, celebrating a legacy of innovation and promise for the future. It's a milestone moment for Dr. John Aucott, right here before me, and his incredible team of colleagues, staff members, and collaborators. My overarching message this evening is going to be one of thanks. Let me start with a thanks to all of you. Give yourselves a round of applause. You are truly the reason we are all here. Now let me mention a few names. Let me thank our ever so committed advisory board, Sharon Akers, Tanya Bentley Young, Andrew Goodman, Carol Brown Goldberg, Marion Hellauer, Nora Kenny, Beth McCrickert, Dale Mathias, Jeffrey Mills, Robert Mills, Ryan Perdue, George Roche, and Dr. Isaac Yoon. And I also want to thank our esteemed members emeriti, Nobel Prize winner Peter Agre, and the always distinguished Ed St. John. Additionally, let me recognize Dr. Ami Shaw, Director of the Division of Rheumatology. Ami, please raise your hand if you're here. There she is back there. Thank you. Ami has been an ardent supporter of the Lyme Center, and her leadership and collaboration, needless to say, are critical to the Lyme Center's future, so we thank her very much. Let me extend my deepest gratitude to the event planning committee members, Sharon Akers, Carol Brown Goldberg, Marion Hellauer, and Beth McCrickert, and to our talented marketing and consulting communications team, Nancy Doherty, Danny Lyman, and Haley Wasserman. And of course, to our enthusiastic development team, Shelley Cook, Stephanie Cohen-Diaz, and Molly Dolan. Hang in there, I'm not quite done. I have a special thank you to George Roche, who was not able to be with us tonight, and Sharon Akers, Edward St. John, and their supportive colleagues from St. John Properties and from the Edward St. John Foundation. Those folks have generously underwritten all the costs of this evening, so we have a great thanks to them. Now, last but certainly not least, one more thank you to Carol Brown Goldberg. The terrific image I know you have been admiring to my right, and I think I can make it even more so. Will you go one forward for me? Thank you. That terrific image I know you've been admiring is her creation. Carol is an accomplished artist whose works hang in a multitude of important places, not the least of which is our very own Lyme Center. She has graciously had this image titled A Garden of Discovery to celebrate a decade of discovery, reproduced as a signed and numbered print for each of you to take home, frame, and enjoy. Don't forget to pick that up as you leave. Most importantly, though, tonight is about everyone in this gathering. Your steadfast commitment has fueled groundbreaking research, empowered patient care, pushed the boundaries of discovery. Because of you, we are dismantling barriers to the understanding of Lyme disease and building bridges toward a far healthier future. With that, I invite you to experience the decade of discovery firsthand through the voices of the faculty, staff, and patients who define the Lyme Center's extraordinary journey. Please watch this special video.
My vision was to have a center that had a multidisciplinary approach, and that's what we've been able to put together over the last 10 years. When I talk about building a multidisciplinary clinic and research program, there's no better place than Hopkins. I mean, you have world-class researchers. Hopkins has this richness of resources and talent that we're able to draw on. The SLICE study is the foundational study in the Lyme Disease Research Center. This very important study examines patients with Lyme disease, but not just at a single time point. It follows them longitudinally. The SLICE study is linked to our biorepository. Those are the blood samples obtained from these longitudinal time points that are incredibly valuable. These blood samples are the basis of all of our collaborations looking for new diagnostic tests, for new biomarkers that will help us know who's going to get better and who's not. And then we can learn how to treat people proactively. We bridge our patients' problems to the research lab, and there's very few places that do that as well. One of the important things in the Lyme Center right now is where we bring in providers from other disciplines. This involves a new collaborator named Dr. Glenn Treisman. He's a medical psychiatrist and neuropharmacologist.
So they're patients with multi-symptom disease, and they go to rheumatologists for their rheumatological problem, psychiatrists for their depression, neurologists for their pain, but nobody gets them better. And so thinking about them in a bigger picture with collaborative care, we do much better with those patients, and we're having these remarkable outcomes for patients who've been sick for a long time. So it's been very exciting. And the wonderful thing is that patients will come in, they'll have seen a million doctors, and nobody will have ever put it together for them. And some of them have rheumatological problems, ongoing immune dysregulation, and so sometimes you have to treat their immune system as well as their autonomic nervous system and their infection.
We've really been able to expand beyond just a narrow focus and to bring in people with complementary approaches, whether that's in psychology and mental health, or rheumatology and autoimmune diseases, neurology. All of those things are part of the complexity of Lyme disease. So you can see it takes a multidisciplinary team, and we're so fortunate to have that team supported by an amazing clinical staff. The clinical team in the Lyme Center includes Cindy Cruz at the front desk, Susan Joseph, an RN, Cheryl Novak, our incredibly talented nurse practitioner. This core clinical team is just essential for the overall functioning of the Lyme Center and really integrates with the physician providers to really form a seamless unit of caregivers. The mission of our clinical care program, of course, is to provide superb clinical care of our patients, but at the same time to link patient care to our research program, to find better diagnostic tests, to find better treatments. A lot of research done by Allison Redmond, who's one of our faculty members, has really been important to show that a large part of what we initially do is by listening to patients, we validate that their problems are important and that we care about them and that their issues aren't just in their head, that they're not psychosomatic. But it all starts with taking the time to listen to the patients.
Hope is one of the first words that comes to my mind when I think of the center. The support of the center in my healing journey was just incredible. It also gave me a special hope, feeling that I was going to be a part of research, discovery, and future treatment of Lyme, that I could be a small part in making it better for someone else.
It gave you hope, and it also gave you focus. Those are the two biggest things. The beauty of the Lyme Center was it's science-based and driven that way. When you go to the Lyme Clinic, it's a calling. They are dedicated and committed, and I'm most grateful for that type of care. You found medicine practiced the way it should be. They were listening to you, they were respectful, they made you feel like you didn't have to race through your symptoms and you kind of got to explain yourself. Until then, I was literally unable to move forward.
A huge milestone, which has been a real accomplishment, is we've successfully competed for NIH funding. Receiving NIH funding gives the validation that what we're doing is good research. There's several aspects of our research right now that I find particularly compelling. One that I'm very excited about actually has to do with brain imaging. This is a project done by Dr. Sherry Marvel in the Department of Neurology. We're able to show that there are brain changes in people, both with acute and chronic Lyme disease, that are unexpected and not previously seen. Some of the most vexing problems in Lyme disease are the neurologic ones. It's so crucial to be able to do objective measures like functional MRI that actually show changes. So part of our building in the next 10 years will be to involve more neurology, to again build out this multidisciplinary approach. We're also developing a big program in dysautonomia with Dr. Britt Adler that's looking at the impact of Lyme disease on the autonomic nervous system and how this relates to the development of fatigue and brain fog. We're also developing a big program with Dr. John Miller, who's a rheumatologist that's looking at autoimmune manifestations of Lyme disease. And he's been very instrumental in showing how Lyme disease sometimes triggers a secondary autoimmune arthritis and how identification of that's crucial for treating the arthritis that can develop as part of Lyme disease. You know, without philanthropy, all these projects wouldn't have had a start. It often takes philanthropy to get projects going, and then we're successful in getting NIH funding, but that can take years. In that gap, the philanthropy has been crucial. So philanthropy built this Lyme Center initially and continues to allow us to start new projects. So I would thank the donors, without which we wouldn't be where we are now, and we won't be where I want to be in another 10 years.
I just want to say how grateful I am for the center and the time, care, and attention that was given to me in my journey. I felt like I mattered, and they're making a difference.
Again, I can't thank them enough for all that they did and basically put my life back on track. Medicine practiced the way it should be. That's made all the difference.
Thank you to Nancy Doherty and Danny Lyman for producing that terrific video. I think it does a wonderful job of capturing the extraordinary journey that the Lyme Center has been on. Nancy's been a driving force behind the center's marketing and public relations through newsletters, which I'm sure all of you have received, our website, and powerful visual narratives like this. Virtually every milestone moment of the Lyme Center has been captured, and our mission and our achievements have been shared with the world at large. Let me also recognize Gina Costa, who is here somewhere, because I saw her earlier. There she is. And Rob McGinley, who I didn't see, but I'm told might be here. Where is he? There he is. And if you don't recognize those two, they're the two patients who were on the screen there. And I want to thank them for sharing their patient testimonials. Their stories, I think, speak directly to the amazing impact that the center's had on so many lives over the last 10 years. Our Lyme Center, indeed your Lyme Center, is now the gold standard for clinical care for Lyme patients in the United States, and I would argue the world. And through grants from major private funders, such as the Stephen and Alexandra Cohen Foundation, there's an even broader commitment to move forward. The Lyme Center isn't just keeping pace with change in the clinical world, it's leading, driven by an ambitious, multidisciplinary approach to clinical care that you just heard about. The center does much more than just care for patients, however. It has research in its name for a reason. Your center's SLICE studies have provided the research community with by far the best biorepository in the country. This vital asset is truly an engine of discovery, supporting 44 external research collaborations with leading Lyme investigators around the world. Yes, collaboration is a cornerstone of the center's mission, both beyond and within the walls of Johns Hopkins. The center has worked extensively with the Bloomberg School of Public Health. It has worked with the Applied Physics Lab. It's worked with the Department of Engineering. Dr. Aucott, as you have seen, has cultivated a number of collaborations within the Department of Medicine, cultivating investigator expertise in dysautonomia, arthritis, neuropsychology, focus areas that are critical to advancing our understanding of immune dysfunction and accelerating the development of innovative diagnostics and treatment. But discovery alone is not enough. We must also invest in the people who enable this progress. John's dedication to the educating of the current generation and the training of the next generation is more crucial than ever. This is evidenced by the center's establishment of the first internal medicine Lyme disease fellowship in the United States, an effort so many of you in this room were essential to the creation of. And through outreach, the center has been at the forefront of empowering today's general practitioners with the knowledge and tools needed to recognize, diagnose, and treat Lyme and tick-borne diseases, a transformative investment in public health. The excellence that your Lyme Center embodies is both a tribute to and a manifestation of the strength of Johns Hopkins. World-class centers of excellence such as this one are essential ingredients in meeting the challenges and capitalizing on the opportunities arising from an increasingly complex medical landscape, one already experiencing the impacts of big data and soon to be at the center of the revolution in artificial intelligence. Yes, there are certainly going to be funding challenges. But the Lyme Center will overcome those, I have no doubt. And the Lyme Center has been exemplary in that regard, in that so much of its success has been derived from private philanthropy. That speaks directly to the support provided by all of you. With your continued investment and partnership, the Lyme Center will be poised to lead the next decade of progress by leveraging cutting-edge technologies, expanding interdisciplinary research, and setting new standards for patient care. Now, to the man of the hour, Dr. Aucott. But wait, not yet. I have but one more thank you. That goes to Sue Aucott, sitting right here. A physician of remarkable accomplishment in her own right, her support of John's mission has been essential to its success. So to John and your remarkable team of physician scientists, staff, researchers, collaborators, thank you for your dedication, compassion, and relentless pursuit of discovery. It is with great pride that I introduce the director of the Johns Hopkins Lyme Disease Research Center, the Barbara Townsend Cromwell Professor in Lyme Disease and Tick-Borne Disease Illnesses, John Aucott.
As Sue and I like to say, oh my. So I'm going to take the chance to dig a little deeper into some of the themes that we've gone over, because this is a special audience. Everyone here I really count as a friend and a colleague. So I want to tell you a little deeper where we came from, where we are, and where we're going, so you have a feel for what's made this happen. So Hopkins is kind of in my blood, in Sue's blood, and it kind of underlies the themes that I'm going to talk about today about the Lyme Center. So Sue and I actually met the first day of medical school at Johns Hopkins, walking out of our dorm and going to class. So we've known each other that whole time. And so when you go to Hopkins Medical School, for those of you that went there, you know, you just get instilled with everything Hopkins and what the value and the specialness of bringing research to patient care is. It's a special place. And when you're a student here, they just beat it into you about how a special place it is. So this is an example of what a special place this is. This is Dr. Tausek, who Peter Rowe knows, and she was still a professor when we were here as students. Well, she was the founder of the Blaylock-Tausek shunt. So this was the kind of thing that was just walking the halls when we were at Hopkins. Dr. Tausek was there. You know, this was the surgery that took blue babies and saved their lives. And so Dr. Tausek, with Dr. Blaylock, the surgeon, developed this surgery. And Dr. Tausek would say there was nothing more gratifying than seeing a baby in the OR go from blue to pink, because the surgery literally saved their lives. That's the kind of thing that Hopkins is known for, right? hundreds, if not thousands, of babies were brought to Hopkins over the next years to have this surgery and to save their lives. And there's just numerous examples of like that we were brought up with in the tradition of Hopkins. I give you this kind of as a framework, the underlying, message of why we think the Lyme Center is so special. It's that Hopkins ethos. So Sue and I left here to go do our residency and fellowship in Cleveland and came back in 1996, and I walked into this epidemic of Lyme disease. And part of the epidemic of Lyme disease was some of the people didn't get better. About 10 to 20% of the people that get Lyme disease get treated and don't get better. And it was perplexing to me. We couldn't figure out what was going on. And so, again, this Hopkins kind of tradition came to mind. What mind was, well, then let's figure it out, right? And, it didn't occur to me that might be a hard thing to do. So let me start with the hardest thing to do. Patients with chronic Lyme disease, it's not like a blue baby that Dr. Taussig saw that was blue. Patients with chronic Lyme disease kind of look like everyone else in the room, even though their lives may be falling apart. They have fatigue and pain and cognitive problems, but from the outside they look good. And so it was very difficult to get a handle on this condition that patients would call chronic Lyme disease. Eventually we would call it post-treatment Lyme disease. But I dove in anyway. So this is the first era from 2008 to 2015 is I naively said, well, let's fix this. So how do you fix it? I was in private practice at Park Medical at the time. How do you fix something when you're in private practice and do research? So this was a team I put together. It's a crazy crew. I had to have patients. So Isaac Yoon, the director of Patient First, started supplying patients along with Dana Frank and the Park Medical Group. So we had patients. I had to design a research study, which I had absolutely no idea what to do. And Allison Redmond had just finished her program up at Columbia, came down and started to design the SLICE study that you've heard about, has been running it ever since. There was this thing called an IRB that I'd never heard of, Institutional Review Board. I didn't know how to write an IRB, but fortunately my wife knew how to write an IRB. And she couldn't get away from me. Every day I'd come home and say, how do you write an IRB? And she said, all right, John, I'll write your IRB. So Sue wrote the IRB. And then, of course, the last thing is, how am I going to pay for this thing? So I'm walking out of DLA Piper one day with Marianne Hellauer, and I said, I kind of knew the answer, but I figured I'd pose this false question like, Marianne, do you know how to start a 501c3 not-for-profit charity? And she looks at me and goes, oh, that's a snap. So, and it was for her. So Marianne started the not-for-profit charity that funded the original research. And we had board members like Terrell Jordan and others that ran it. So that was the first phase. And I guess the bottom line is Hopkins is full of these great people, right? And the people in the community that's made this happen. So fast forward to 2015, Anthony Rosen went out on a limb to invite me to join the Division of Rheumatology. I'm actually an infectious disease person, so I tell people I'm an adopted rheumatologist. And Anthony went out on a limb and hired me, and this was the opening ceremony for the Lyme Center, Landon King, Alex, and then always Sharon Akers in the background providing support. And this was a big move up because now we're part of the Lyme Center is in Hopkins proper. This is a division of rheumatology. So we moved across the street. Cindy went with me. We added Susan and Cheryl. And I went from, myself seeing all the patients to actually having a team. Oh my gosh, what luxury. We have Cheryl seeing patients, Caroline seeing patients. We have MAs. We have a real clinical team now. So that's the second phase of things. And that team is linked to a research team. And so this is really the magic of the program that you all have supported. The patients are connected to research. The patients come to us and they don't know what's wrong. And they've come to Hopkins because they think we can help. And we help them, but we also connect them to the research team. So remember I showed you the original picture of Allison and I don't know if you recall that picture. That was her on a fold-up table in the corner of my office at Park Medical. That was the Lyme Center. Imagine the absurdity of that. That was my office. I was seeing patients in the exam room, and she was sitting in the corner at a fold-up table running the SLICE study. That was the Lyme Center. So now it's now Allison and I still in the middle, but this is now part of the team of the Lyme Research Center. And it's connected at Green Spring, where we see the patients that are enrolled in the studies, to the group out at Bayview with Sarab and Daniela that run the biorepository, do research at Bayview. And this is a real deal. Now, we've moved up in the world and we're able to leverage what we started the 10 years before. So, you've seen some of this in the video. I'm just going to reemphasize a couple things that I think are really important. One is the NIH funding that we have and the fellowship. But then the thing on the right, you haven't seen, this just actually happened last weekend. So this is the thing I'm actually the most proud of. So this is a paper that came out in the Annals of Internal Medicine. This is one of the prestigious journals in the medical field. This was last weekend, and this is the state-of-the-art clinical review of Lyme disease. So this is the article that's published and sent out to all internists to teach them how to take care of Lyme disease. For the last 2 decades, my goal was to get referenced in these kind of articles. And this last weekend, this is weird, they actually put the references on the side of the text. And if you look who the references are for the section on persistent symptoms after treatment of Lyme disease, Aucott, that's Isaac Yoon there. And down below, Allison Redmond. We have 3 of the references in this section. So to be honest with you, this is what it was all about, that our research is impacting the state-of-the-art research and clinical approach to Lyme disease. This, I can't tell you how important this is. This means what we've been doing, that you've been supporting, has made a difference, teaching people, but this journal goes out to, this is the premier internal medicine journal. And so they're reading about this and they're seeing that, hey, this is the work that they did at Hopkins. So, all right, so now my last phase, what's the future look like? So this is where we're going. So you're looking at this going, what the heck is this? So I have to go back to medical school. So this is a little history here. So when I was in medical school, which was a ways ago, there was a lecturer that stood up and said, there's this crazy guy that thinks he understands what causes peptic ulcer disease. He thinks it's caused by a bacteria, and this was the head of GI pathology giving the lecture, and he goes, this is crazy. Everyone knows that a bacteria can't live at the acidic pH that's in your stomach. It's just crazy. That doesn't make any sense at all. And he said, it's out there. I wanted to tell you about it, but this probably bears no weight. So, and so I actually went back to my textbook of medicine from that year that was the authoritative Hopkins textbook of medicine. And you know what it said caused peptic ulcer disease? This is, I won't tell you how long ago this was. So we know what caused peptic ulcer disease in the textbook then? It was the classic psychosomatic illness. It was felt to be due to stress and anxiety. And there was even a section, a Freudian section, that linked it back to your issues with your mother. This is in the textbook of medicine in 1980. And so this guy had the audacity to think that maybe this just is not all about your mother, but it has something to do with a biology, a pathophysiology of a disease. And he won the Nobel Prize for it. So what allowed that to happen? Well, I'll pose that it was 2 things. One was having the guts to put out a crazy hypothesis and to think about what could be causing it. And then 2 was the advances in technology. It couldn't have happened without something called endoscopy, which was being commonly employed at that time. So you could look in somebody's stomach and take biopsies and find these bacteria. So I just pose this to tell you that this is what I think our future about. It's not that Lyme disease is due to something. I'm not saying that's the hypothesis here. But what I'm saying is it takes the audacity to explore hypotheses that other people don't think are the cause and to employ the new technology that will allow you to figure these things out. So I'll just review what we've already learned, but go a little more in depth. So we have somebody like Allison Redmond that is looking at the patient's histories and their stories and their narratives and bringing those to understand what's at the root of the patient's illness. Again, showing that it's not all in their head, that it's due to a real disease. And then we stretched Allison a little further, and she's also starting to get into AI and other ways of looking at things. John Miller, who again, John's taught me a lot of things. Again, I'm an adopted rheumatologist, how to examine people's joints. But even in addition to joint exams, he employs ultrasound to look underlying inflammation of the joints. This is an example of the technologies that we're bringing to the table, and John's doing that as part of his program. Britt Adler, who's looking at this thing called dysautonomia, which it controls your heart rate and organ functions. It's a part of your nervous system that right now is telling your heart to beat, right? Nobody in the room right now is telling your heart to beat. It's just happening. It's part of your autonomic nervous system. Well, Britt's exploring problems in the autonomic nervous system by doing things to stress it and to see what happens to people's blood pressure and pulse when she puts them in this medieval torture instrument called a tilt table test, and takes them from flat to upright and sees what happens to their blood pressure. And this is a mechanism for causing poor blood flow to your brain, which causes fatigue, hypothesized to cause fatigue and brain fog. Again, applying technology like this transcranial Doppler ultrasound to measure blood flow. Sherry Marvel, who's been doing this fMRI study. Again, I want to go a little deeper. What you don't know about Sherry is she's a bulldog. And so Sherry, so when Sherry started doing these fMRIs, we found findings. These are fMRI images of the white matter of your brain. And when she first got this finding, she goes, John, there's a problem here. You're not supposed to have white matter or bold images on fMRI. And it doesn't happen. And yet I found it. And I said, well, that's good. Figure out why, And so we spent probably a year or two trying to figure out why and trying to convince reviewers that it was real. Well, she finally convinced the reviewers that it was real. This was a sentinel finding that nobody has ever found before in an infectious process, post-infectious process. And then a year later, people at another institution reported it, so she was right. And Sherry. So she's a bulldog. The second thing she's a bulldog about is the imaging. Everything that you see on an image, we're used to thinking, well, that's bad. You don't want your white matter to light up on an fMRI. That's got to be bad. In multiple sclerosis, that's a bad thing. It turns out it's a good thing. It's part of the healing process going on after the Lyme disease. Again, nobody believes it right now, and so she's on a quest to try to convince people that that's real too. So that's what I meant about being courageous enough to go outside of the box and get rejected by journal after journal, but then finally getting it published. So that's that. And then this multidisciplinary model that you've heard about that is kind of our new adventure, which is bringing people in from other departments like psychiatry, infectious diseases, surgery, neuropsychology, and getting their perspectives, because we don't believe that the brain and the body are two separate things. They're all connected, right? And if you don't understand how the brain is connected to the rest of the body, we'll never figure out the diverse manifestations of Lyme disease. So I'll finish up with the university as a whole. Every time I give a talk, I have to modify this slide. I'm running out of room to put the collaborators that we have at the university. It's just Hopkins is an amazing place, right? I mean, we've got my team that I told you about, but we have the neurologists. We're doing a psychedelic study with the Center for Psychedelic Research. We're getting ready to publish on the impact of psilocybin as a beneficial treatment for chronic Lyme disease through the Psychedelic Center. We have Nicole's group in the School of Public Health and the geospatial people that are working with us on different projects. The Applied Physics Lab. Hopkins is just like, when I got involved, it's a candy jar of smart people, right, to get involved in the research. So that's what's made this possible. And then finally, I'll end up with, is always in the behind the scenes of this, are the people that are part of the audience here that without which we couldn't do this. You all, friends and supporters and board members, get the word out and allow us to do the work, and also to get the word out to other people. So I put this slide in because Alex is the head of the board, invited me to give a talk up at Shinnecock Golf Course. And it took me about 6 months to figure out how to pronounce Shinnecock Golf Course, right? But Alex, Carol Goldberg, Martha's Vineyard for talks. We get invited to places to teach the people, both patients and other researchers, about what you supported here. And that's because of the connections that you all help us make and behind the scenes making this all possible. So I'll end with that. The only time that I've ever given a lecture on a golf course, and that's what we do, is we try to take our research and link it to the communities, the patients, and other researchers around the country. So thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
My final task is to thank you all for coming, but I will say that when John gave that talk up at Shinnecock, and we're at a country club right now, when he gave that talk, before he showed up, the head of the groundskeeper, grabbed me and he said, is there any chance that I could spend some time with Dr. Aucott? And John very graciously gave him about a half an hour, and this guy grilled John on how he could protect the caddies, the groundskeepers, all of these people from Lyme disease. It was a major concern on that golf course, and it's now going to host the U.S. Open next year. So whatever John did was good. Thank you all for coming. Get your picture taken. Don't forget to take Carol's wonderful image when you leave. Enjoy the food, the drink. It's all here for a while. So thank you.